Is The Last Titan the final WoW expansion? Could we be getting a WoW 2 after The Last Titan? A lot of us have kind of... I actually do kind of want it. I would like to see a big reset of the game. I do think that they can create a better MMO at this time without having to like build and bloat the shit out of the game over the last 20 plus years. I think it's time for a reset. I can imagine them creating a great new MMO, still World of Warcraft, but just a better version of it. And we recently saw like Riot has basically canceled their MMO at this point. I don't know if you guys saw the announcements. Riot Games is like, oh shit, we're gonna reset this MMO and this shit's not coming out for 10 years, man. So Blizzard's got time to still be the king, the one true king without any real competition besides Final Fantasy. But could a reset be in order? Let's see what Doran has to say.
The World Soul Saga and The Last Titan is perfectly set up to wrap up World of Warcraft in the grand finale of the series. We will deal with the entire villain roster of World of Warcraft. The Warlords, the Titans, Lights, Sargeras. We will see all the big characters we know of, Illidan, Anduin, Thrall, and we will deal with the World Soul of Azeroth, the biggest thing of the series, essentially.
That's why some of us believe that this could be the final expansion in this storyline, because what is left after we deal with the Titans and the Void Lords? What is left? Those are the biggest of the big bads left in the game. There's nothing beyond that. At least in terms of lore, we've never heard of anything beyond that. And how do you keep power increasing after that? You almost run into like the Dragon Ball issue, or like, what the hell? Where do you go from here? Super Saiyan 14? I don't know. What's left after this?
Saving the planet.
The power creep becomes too much.
No one is really left from the known lore for us to fight in the future. Luckily on BlizzCon, Blizzard did say that the saga is only the start of the next 20 years of Warcraft, but realistically the way they went kinda all in on this project gives them two absolute options depending on player growth and performance. If Warcraft declines, they can just wrap it up and call it a day. If it grows, they have to come up with brand new lore for another saga. So could The Last Titan really be the final WoW expansion?
And you know what? Coming up with new lore, I don't think would be the hardest thing in the world, to be honest, because they're doing it. They're doing it right now in Season of Discovery. They're coming up with cool new branch stories, different stories. They're delving deeper into parts of the game that really are still left a mystery. They could do that in a WoW too. Totally.
What could we expect to see for the future of the game? If you want to get Dragonflight or anything else Warcraft related, Gamivo has some excellent deals that you can check out with my link below. Best of all, you can get software, gift cards, a bunch of games at below market prices. On top of that, you can also use my code Doran to get yet another discount, so make sure to check out my link below and grab some amazing deals at Gamivo. If you really look into the World Soul Saga, you will realize that Blizzard is really just going all in and wrapping up all the lore that is currently available. We already know the concepts for the next 3 expansions. We can pretty accurately predict who is going to be involved in each of them and how it is roughly going to play out. And essentially, we are ending the storyline of all the big villains that we know of in the
We're ending the storyline of WoW,
which naturally gets a lot of people wondering if this really could be the end of World of Warcraft as we know it. Realistically, the lore of Warcraft was never really built for the MMORPG. I mean, this is something Blizzard had addressed on many occasions. Originally, it started as a pretty simple orc versus human storyline. Then we got quite a bit of nuance in Warcraft 3, a lot of new races. But in all reality, Blizzard kinda ran out of most of Warcraft 3 lore by the end of Wrath of the Lich King. I mean, they admitted to this recently themselves. That is
if they did go the WoW 2 route, if they did go like full-blown revamp of everything, you know, all new graphics, all new. I don't want the game to look like realistic, but, you know, fleshing everything out in a brand new, hyper-polished version of the game. I would love to see them return to the war in Warcraft. I would love to see a very hard, gritty storyline, you know, some more of that, oh, we hate each other, everything's kind of fighting, there's a lot of war, there's a lot of death, all these things going, rather than the hyper-friendly version of the game we have right now, where everyone's hugging. We literally got our first in-game kiss. I mean, that's where the game is right now. So I would like to see the storyline return more to a darker... I mean, the original WoW had fucking corpses hanging from trees as you ran into a Scarlet Monastery. Like, there was some really dark shit in this game. And those corpses are still there, but, you know, that kind of shit was, like, everywhere. There was some very dark stuff in this game, so I would like to see more of that.
We dealt with Illidan, Arthas, Scourge, Lich King, Kael'thas, pretty much all the big Warcraft 3 players, and then Blizzard reverted to some older lore to bring back Deathwing.
Restart WoW and have a lore. They could.
Invented an entire new continent, entirely new lore. That was
go to the other side of the world, have huge new continents, a huge new reset. You could even have like orcs and humans and everything, but it's the version of them that lived on the other side of the world that never interacted with this side of the world. You're right. You could have factions again, everything. That could be the best way to reset it.
Based on like one NPC back from Warcraft 3. Then in Worlds of Draenor they did a throwback to Warcraft 1.
Make it action play like the new event. You could also do that,
focus on the orcish part of the Warcraft series. Now, you may be thinking, I mean, the Warcraft lore as we know it kind of ended with Sargeras and WoW Legion, and that is kind of correct, but keep in mind, if you followed the lore for a really long time, you might remember that Sargeras wasn't really that big of a deal. He was mainly a footnote at the start of World of Warcraft, and then they really played into him like as the big bad guy for Legion, and for the longest time, he was like this main huge villain of the Warcraft universe, like this is one
I mean, me, as an original WoW player, vanilla WoW, Sargeras always seemed like the true end game boss, right? Sargeras was the big bad. I mean, we dabbled with him with a little bit in Legion, but he was such a big bad that we couldn't have dealt with him back then. And that was how I viewed him. I always thought Sargeras would be like the final big bad of all of World of Warcraft. Obviously, now we go way beyond that, and I didn't load the lore back then. But he was the original big bad of WoW. And mind you, back to the kind of the WoW 2 conversation, yes, Tundra Freeze, I totally agree. The action play, that could be a thing. Trust me, a lot of the stuff they introduced with this new event, they're testing things. It's not just like hey, we wanted to put a BR in WoW. This is a separate part of the game where they can really test some interesting things that maybe one day get implemented into the real game. And yes, maybe that action play is something that they're dabbling in. It could be. The thing is, I kind of do like tab targeting because I suck. I suck at games. That's the truth. I suck at games. And I like tab targeting because it makes it a bit easier. But I'm down for that. If they decide to go that route for a new generation, new people, maybe they like that kind of gameplay more. And they're testing it. They really are.
Bad guy that all of us knew we will eventually deal with. We also kind of had the old gods as a parallel at the same time as well, but this is also a great example of Warcraft 3 characters that were really turned into big villains later on to make the story work, as back in the RTS they were literally just some hidden horror in Northrend, but not really a big deal. Like the Lich King was a much bigger deal. Now Blizzard realized that they can't really go further anywhere from this, so they came out with the Chronicle that really expanded the cosmological forces to set the ground for a lot more expansions.
Chronicle was a ground builder.
The entire storyline that will be wrapping up in the World Soul Saga. That is when they heavily expanded upon the Titans. The World Soul of Azeroth started being a thing. Later, the Pantheon of Death, Elune, and then
if you think about it, yeah, Chronicle built the foundation for the game, and really, once the World Soul Saga is done, everything in Chronicle is done. There is nothing. Chronicle has mentioned nothing beyond everything that's going to happen in the World Soul Saga. So that's it. There will have to be tons of new lore if the game continues beyond that.
When they really introduced
they'll have to release a new Chronicle.
Warlords as one of the big villains of the Warcraft universe. You can even tell this happened later because Dimensius, the All Devouring, like one of the big Void Lords, was a tiny minion back in TBC. Later in the Chronicle, he was written as one of the most powerful guys in the entire cosmos. Lore-wise, it makes sense. I mean, he was a tiny manifestation on Outland, but it is obvious that this wasn't the original plan. I mean, if they figured the Void Lords as the ultimate Warcraft villains back in TBC, they definitely wouldn't have just added him as a quest villain in Outland. If you guys followed the lore for the longest time, you can see this was a huge trend that happened over the years. For example, the old gods were originally created to be potentially the biggest villains of the Warcraft universe, like actual gods of the entire cosmos, and then later they were retconned as just the tools of the Void Lords, so no one really super important, and even old gods exist over other planets. However, here comes the big finale, and that is the fact that this entire gigantic cosmological chronological storyline that Blizzard had seeded around the time of Legion with the Chronicle is obviously going to come to an end in the World Soul Saga,
right.
and we are quite literally just going to run out of villains. Just look at the data we have. We will deal with the old gods and the remnants through Xal'atath, we will deal with the Light and the Naru, we will deal with the Shadow and the Warlords, and ultimately we will deal with the Titan Pantheon that recently started being bad guys. Very likely we will also deal with the Death Force to Denatrius. We're most certainly going to see the involvement of Sargeras and Illidan, and it seems
that could be the one storyline that I see somehow continuing is the Dreadlords. Like maybe they could push the Dreadlords more. Like they, you know, they're so conniving, they escape somehow. We think we've defeated them, but there's one more remaining disguise somewhere. Pepe being that one more. These things could happen, but what is more likely is like we're literally going to meet the World Soul. We're going to meet Azeroth. We're going to figure out what Elune is, right? We're going to defeat the Titans, defeat the Void Lords. Like there really is no more mystery left in the game, and it's kind of hard to have a fantasy world without mystery. It is. They usually go hand in hand. So what goes on beyond that, whether there's anything lingering beyond what we have, I feel like a total reset is probably the way to go. Take us to the other side of the world, create new characters, do the whole thing.
Really going to deal with the World Soul of Azeroth in the finale and potentially awakening Azeroth,
yeah, you're right,
could be ending everything. Seriously, by all the info, the only thing we might not see by the end of the saga are the first ones that he had just introduced in the Shadowlands,
yeah,
but Shadowlands
lore
to begin with. So taking all this into
it.
account, by the time the last Titan is finished, essentially the entire roster of WoW villains will disappear like all the big eyes, and naturally this brings a lot of people to question whether this really is the end of World of Warcraft as we know it. Now the good news is the BlizzCon information. As you may remember, Chris Metzen said that the World Soul Saga is just the start, and that since 2024 is the 20th anniversary of World of Warcraft, they are with this saga setting up the next 20 years of Warcraft, and well, that
the 20th anniversary is coming up. I mean, I could imagine them making some massive announcement. We know there's going to be an anniversary event. Maybe they don't announce the fact that they're making a WoW 2, but they could. That could be a timeline where they say, you know what? After the World Soul Saga, there's going to be a complete reset of the game. I don't know if that would demotivate people. That's the only worry I have, is like maybe people won't play the World Soul Saga then because they'll be like, I'm just going to wait till that happens. But that's going to be years out, so who knows? Who knows how they handle it PR-wise? Because you got to keep people motivated to still play the current game. You don't want to just kill your game too soon.
And I think it's not really that simple. It is no secret that World of Warcraft has definitely fell off over the years. I mean, even the most hardcore fan can admit this, and this is of course, I mean, completely natural for a game that has been lasting for 20 plus years. Blizzard has obviously stopped reporting the player numbers that they used to do all the time, but let's just say at the moment we are definitely far off from the peak of 12 million active players.
Yeah.
And for the old school
We're
people,
probably like
you might
4.
remember that Warcraft back in the day was like crazy popular, like super mainstream, and everyone and their mother knew about it. I mean, the game today is still big, it's still popular, but it is a lot more niche in the entire gaming sphere than it used to be like 10, 15 years ago. My most honest opinion is that the World Soul Saga project is a huge experiment, and it is really set up as a do or die type thing, depending on how the game is going to perform in the next 5 or 6 years. If the game doesn't get more players and becomes less profitable for the company, they could perfectly set it up to essentially wrap up all the lore, deal with all the big villains, save Azeroth, and just end it all and just keep the game on maintenance. However, in the case it grows, they can also set it up to deal with all the big villains, and then they would have to get to work to come up with a brand new storyline that would emerge.
Yeah, there's gonna have to be a new Chronicle
that we currently have. This is also one of the reasons they had only roughly outlined what will be happening and why they had for the first time ever told us about 3 expansions in advance, which was really crazy because they want us to know that they're going all in, and they told us on BlizzCon they're...
And also remember, like this expansion, these expansions coming out, the World Soul Saga, it's going to happen pretty quickly. I mean, they talked about it. They want to basically have a yearly, almost yearly expansion release cadence. So we're going to see that happen where we got about 4 years, 4 to 5 years left of current WoW. And then beyond that, we have to see what happens. Yeah. Release what now? Yeah.
really going all in. I don't
Your
think
name
they
is
even
very
know
relevant.
right now how the storyline is going to go, and they're kind of winging it depending on the profitability. You gotta keep in mind, if they really go hard on the characters and just delete them, they will essentially deplete the entire pool of villains that they currently have and big characters. Realistically, from this perspective, the only thing they can do is to expand more on the first ones and how the 6 cosmological forces are not that big of a deal, and they can go even crazier on the cosmology.
Do we want that, though?
Have the entire other side of Azeroth, but really, how many
This is what I want. I mean, look, I want to see the other side of Azeroth storyline come out, because I don't want to get too cosmological, too deep, too weird. You know, I would like to have like some big bads come back. Not ones that we know. I'm saying like big bads as in like, if you go to the other side of the world, you can have a Lich King-esque bad, right? Like a Lich King kind of story, where there's this guy who's fallen off, whatever, he becomes a bad guy, and you got to deal with him, kind of thing. Where it's like very grounded in the current world. There's still grass everywhere you can touch. There's still trees around you. We're not getting outer spacey or anything. There could be villains on that side of the world that we've never seen before that we deal with, much like we dealt with the villains of early WoW, you know? Just a big boss in a cave kind of thing. Because we've never seen that side of the world. We've never dealt with those problems yet.
Times can we really discover hidden continents on Azeroth? Like, when are we actually going to explore this planet? The good news, though, is that if WoW does well, which personally I think it will,
yeah, Groovy, that'd be great.
Vaguely end a lot of the minions. Like, we don't have to.
I hope the final cinematic of the Last Titan is the jailer explaining to us that this was all part of his plan. Yeah, perfect. Yeah, what a great way to end World of Warcraft as an MMO.
Destroy the void for the light in midnight. We can only temporarily stop it, so that after the World Soul Saga, we can really go into a full-on void invasion or a void expansion that isn't actually based on Azeroth. We could also not destroy the Titans. We could have an entire expansion on some Titan homeworld that could be entirely new content that we never heard about. Even with the characters
how long will
like
that
Elune,
last?
you could recently foreshadow that borders of the Emerald Dream exist that could potentially be crossed, so they got some wiggle room in this entire material dream elemental plane that kind of exists parallel to the one we are in. Also, we always got time travel with alternate realities.
I hope they don't do this. I don't know, time travel gets so damn messy. By the way, this cinematic was great. I mean, say what you want about WoW, this is a cool cinematic, man. Times change, baby. Yeah, time travel is not my thing. I don't want to do it. I think it gets very messy. It's hard to write the lore correctly. It's just, I hope they don't do that.
Azeroth, like how we got alternate
if they want to do a reset, like a Cataclysm level reset, where like, oh my god, we lost and we're resetting kind of thing, okay. That's not really time travel. That's resetting. That's the current timeline would still exist. It happened, and now we're advancing beyond that. But time travel, where two timelines are running parallel, all that, it gets weird.
But personally, I'm not sure if I really want to see that, as really that is a whole different can of worms that if they open
I never played
can't
FF3.
really go back. However, I do think depending on the hype and the performance and the profitability,
yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I was talking about.
The World Soul Saga is potentially the finale of World of Warcraft. It is perfectly set up to end the entire Warcraft series if they can no longer profitably push the game. But at the same time, if it does well, they got a ton of wiggle room to see new lore for at least another saga or two. Thank you for watching. Check out the Lost Human Kingdom. You'll soon discover by clicking on the screen, and check out my video on ancient Greek colonies in Spain by clicking on the screen as well. See you next time.
Yeah, I'm sure they've had these internal discussions. What's the plan after the World Soul Saga? And I'm sure they vetted everything. I guarantee you they've talked about WoW 2. They've talked about WoW 2. They've talked about what happens beyond the World Soul Saga, and that plan is already in place. They're working on it. Whatever it is, if they decided to make a WoW 2, they are working on it. I personally would love to see that. I would love to see a reset. Yeah, go to the other side of the world. That's fine if that's how you want to do the story for the reset. Or Big Bad wins, reset the world. That's fine too. But I do think that's what the game needs. I do. It's too bloated. It's too hard for anybody to get into. This would be a chance, if they did a reset, for the old players to continue to play the game they love in a new way, and for new players to finally get a chance to come in on the ground level. You missed the train last time. 20 years ago, you missed your chance. But here it is, like a salesman. This opportunity only comes once every 20 years. Get on the train or you'll be behind. Yeah, this will be it. So people will want to join. I feel like it'll be a hyped event. Probably be one of the biggest gaming events in world history, honestly, if they did a WoW 2. That launch would be massive. So I hope they do it. I hope that's the route they go.